Good morning, everyone. It is about time for us to get commercial. So I'm going to call the Commerce Committee to order, and will our clerk please take the roll?
Representatives Alexander, Boyd, Calfee, Camper, Faison, Haston, Hazelwood, Hodges, Holsclaw, Johnson, Lynn, Manis, Moon, Powell, Powers, Sparks, Thompson, Towns, Zachary, Vice Chairman Bricken, Chairman Vaughn.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Outstanding. Before we get started on today's commercial activity, do we have anyone that has any personal orders, any recognitions, any shout outs to anyone? Looking around, I'm seeing a lot of glare and reflection of myself in my side mirrors here, but since I don't see any, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's calendar. Item number 1 on today's calendar is House Bill 0091. We've got a motion bill already on the second. It's presented by Leader Lamberth. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will actually be presenting.
Representative Hurd, it's very good to see you in the well.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here. House Bill 91. This bill aligns the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund.
We've already got a motion and a second, my friend.
Sorry. Aligns the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund terms with improvements made at the federal level by authorizing an eligible entity to elect up to a 30-year loan term, increased from a 20-year term under current law, and up to a 40-year loan term for those communities that fit the definition of a disadvantaged community under the law, increased from 30-year term under current law. These loans are used for the planning, design, and construction of drinking water infrastructure projects. Renew my motion.
Thank you, Representative Hurt. Do we have any questions on the bill? Do we have any questions on the bill? Seeing none, we are going to call for a vote on House Bill 0091. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed by saying nay? The ayes have it. We're moving on to calendar and rules, Representative Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Next up on our agenda is House Bill 0106 by Leader Lamberth. We recognize a motion and a second for this bill. Leader Lamberth, could you share with us the wisdom of this activity?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This bill would allow for for-profit corporations, if they so choose with their shareholders, to do remote meetings. And again, it leaves it entirely up to them. It's up to their bylaws and charter, but this would allow for that. I didn't know this was precluded under state law until one of the corporations came to me and said they cannot do this unless we give them permission. That's what the bill does.
All righty. Do we have any questions on this outstanding piece of legislation? You aren't recognized, sir. No questions. All right. We've got a question has been called on this bill. Any objections to the question? Seeing none, we're going to vote. All those in favor of House Bill 0106 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Hearing none. Leader, you're headed to calendar and rules with that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up on our calendar is House Bill 0207, also by Leader Lamberth. We've got a motion and a second. Leader Lamberth, could you share with us about this bill, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, very straightforward piece of legislation. In an online world, we have musicians and songwriters and others that have a lot of their material that is stolen from time to time by online websites, many times from websites that are stationed outside of our country. But this just says you've got to have your correct name, physical address, telephone number on the website if you're streaming that type of material, so that if for some reason there is an issue where you're taking someone else's material without compensation, they at least know how to reach out to you and ask you not to do that, or potentially bring legal action if that's necessary. But a lot of these websites, there's no way to really track down who they are, and this would just make them somewhere out there identify who they are.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions on this bill? We've got Chairman Hazelwood. Chairman Hazelwood first, saw her hand.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What is the penalty for not having this on the website? I see the penalty for.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And there's not a prescribed penalty in state law. It would be that if they're in violation of this and are eventually able to track down whatever this website is, that it would be something that could come into their legal action against that entity. But it's not, we didn't make it a crime or anything like that in the statute.
So we don't have an enforcement mechanism in here other than the ability to do a civil lawsuit if you track them down.
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And other than through, again, the civil aspect of the judicial system.
No, thank you.
Excuse me. So effectively, this, I think I'm not an attorney, but I've watched a lot of them. You, sir, are. So this basically defines a cause of action for why someone may be sued. Understood. Leader Lamberth.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. It would be a part of that cause of action. The underlying case would, of course, mean that they are stealing someone else's material, and this would become a part of that case.
All right. Super. Representative, you were on. Okay. Super. Any other questions? Any other questions? Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, is this on the bill?
Yes.
It's on the bill, okay, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for bringing the bill. I mean, as the markets change, as the industry change and the technology changes, okay, obviously we have to keep up. If you write a song or you produce something and technology kind of cuts you out of it, like for instance, as it does with, we're changing that a little bit here, buying over the internet. We lost revenue after revenue after revenue after revenue after revenue because we were not capturing what we should have been capturing, okay? It's kind of like the same scenario. We have to figure out how people have invested their money, invested their time, invested their talent into this particular arena or this industry and to try to make sure they're made whole, okay? So I think it's a good piece of legislation, and I'd like to sign on to it if we can.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions for the leader on this one? Representative Towns.
Straight, did I hear you say that you're not a lawyer, but you've been watching this man so you feel like you can talk like a lawyer now? Is that what you're trying to say? Please don't do it. Don't do it.
Representative, I think I would be classified as a low-rent version of an attorney. Anyway, seeing no further questions on the bill, we are now prepared to vote on it. All those in favor of House Bill 0207, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Leader Lamberth, you're moving on to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
calendar and rules. Next up on our calendar is House Bill 0094. Once again, oh, excuse me, no, we're going back to 0421. My bad. 0421 by Leader Lamberth. Do I hear a motion on the bill? I have a motion and a second. All right, Leader Lamberth, you are in proper position. If you could share some thoughts.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, this bill, I mean, over time, so there are certain industries out there that we regulate pretty heavily, and there are good reasons for that. And when it comes to loans and fees, and especially loans of this nature, we've put in statute what can be charged and how it can be charged. We put some guardrails out there on this particular industry. So when we do that over time, we wind up coming back and just kind of cost of inflation, cost of business going up over time. We have a bill like this kind of every few years, and that's what this bill does. So these fee adjustments are necessary to cover the usual increase in the cost of doing business, but they also do help comply with some federal requirements as well. So over time, the federal requirements have gotten more costly in this particular industry. So what Section 1 will do is it changes the amount of the service charge allowed from 4% to 5% under Part A. And then in Section 4, it will change the installment maintenance fee allowed under Part A to a flat fee of $5 a month. So it limits it at that. And then down in Section 6, it'll add a new section to the code that will create a closing fee of up to 4% of the amount financed for the loans under Part B of the Act. And so again, this is keeping guardrails on this particular industry, but allowing for a modest increase in what they can charge, because these are, in some cases, higher risk. And so it just allows for that, again, in the statute to kind of follow along with the cost increases that have occurred in the industry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand ready for questions.
Thank you, Leader. And in this instance, this is primarily dealing with institutions that are providing services to individuals who may not be able to acquire these services through normal underwriting procedures. And so that risk-reward equation sometimes needs to be balanced. I understand that. For questions, I have Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leader, question on the installment fees and the other fees that you mentioned, those are not subject to the interest, right? So that's just a fee that's charged, but that's not going to accrue more interest, correct?
Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, sir. To my knowledge, that just goes with the service charge.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Any other questions on this bill? Seeing none, we are now prepared to vote on House Bill 0421. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing no nays. Leader Lamberth, you are headed to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, the committee, and it's the best committee I've been in front of all day. Thank y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't jinx yourself, Leader. Next up on our agenda, we'll continue with the Leader Lamberth show. House Bill 0094.
So, Mr. Chairman, these other bills are being carried by sponsors that will do a much better job than I would have. Chairman Boyd and Bricken will carry the next two, and I can assure you they know much more about these bills than I do.
Oh, all righty. Thank you. Forgive me. I see that. So next up on presenting House Bill 0094, I believe is Chairman Boyd. Mr. Chairman, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 94 is a administration bill. It has essentially 4 points. It's very technical in nature, but essentially Section 1 allows that if an employer requests a post-judgment hearing, that the preponderance of evidence is on them. Section 2 moves the Next Step program, which is a vocational assistance program that was set to sunset on June 30th of this year. It moves it forward to June 30th of 2025. Makes it a little bit easier so that someone can qualify a little bit quicker after the injury than it would have before. And Section 4 simply allows workers' comp judges to set up judicial mediation in addition to traditional mediation through the Department of Labor. I'll take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Surely no one has a question for seeing any. All righty. If we're not going to ask any questions on this bill to Chairman Boyd, we're going to vote on it. All of you who are in favor of House Bill 0094, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Chairman Boyd, you're off to finance from here. Next on our items is House Bill 077, presented by Chairman Bricken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is also an administration bill, and it comes at the request of the Commissioner of the Department of Financial Institutions. The bill basically authorizes a state bank to request from the Commissioner a waiver of or modification of certain terms and conditions that are currently applicable to national banks. This legislation would allow the department to better power Tennessee banks to serve the citizens of our state. With that, I'll certainly open for any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Brickens. And I will say this, for those of you who were not in our banking subcommittee, we listened to a presentation from the banking commissioner for the state, and it's nice to hear when they say that the state of the banking industry throughout our state is one that is healthy, that we're seeing a lot more financial institutions trying to move here due to our regulatory environment, and in no small part due to the commissioner's ability and strengths leading the program. So anyway, that I'll finish my editorializing, recognize anybody who has any questions. Any questions on the bill? Seeing none, we are going to vote on House Bill 77. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, House Bill 77 goes to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. Representative Hazelwood is bringing us House Bill 252. Representative Hazelwood, you are recognized. I have a motion and a second.
Thank you. This bill is an electric worker safety bill. It basically, because working on electric power lines is one of the most dangerous jobs in America, we need to do what we can to make sure that people who are doing that are protected. And as we all know, with storms, tornadoes that we've seen here, ice storms, and all of those things, we on a fairly regular basis, it seems now we're having power outages that require restoration. So what this bill would require, any new equipment from the date of passage, any new equipment that is capable of generating electricity that's interconnected into the grid, you'd have to make sure that you install that equipment properly according to UL guidelines, and that it's inspected by the state electrical inspector's office. There's some other points I can go to if there are questions and people want to delve into details. But basically the really important piece of this is make sure that the people responsible for the grid are aware of any equipment that could generate power on that grid, and they have the capability of turning it off when they're restoring power to make sure that lines that they think they have cut dead, that they truly are dead, and there's not a safety issue for those workers. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would renew the motion and stand ready for questions.
Thank you, Chairman Hazelwood. Fun fact, some of you may or may not know, I'm actually a licensed professional electrical engineer by training and licensing. And so this is a great bill. It's not only worker safety, but it also protects the integrity of the generating grid itself. Piece of legislation that we do have a need for. So with that, we're seeing no other. Representative Towns, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. Now, it states that there would be need for, I would think, additional oversight or inspection by the state. So does that mean that we're going to, which it should mean, I hope it does, that we're going to have to hire more people to get out and do it with all the storms and stuff that we're having throughout the state? We may need to, actually boast up our complement of people that can go out and inspect these lines, because if not, that means they're going to be delayed down. So are we looking at the other side as well to make sure we got enough people to go out and inspect them?
I agree, but Chairman Hazelwood, you recognize it.
The inspection is actually on the installation of the equipment to make sure that it's installed properly and that the cutoff is there, and that whoever, whether it's Volunteer Electric, EPB, Nashville Electric, whoever it is, that they know that equipment is on the grid and they know where to cut it off. So the inspection is on the front end during the restoration process.
And to not get too deep in the weeds on it, but whenever you buy a handheld generator from Home Depot that you plug your refrigerator in to keep your meat from spoiling during a power outage, that is not connected to the grid. That doesn't backfeed through the house. So it's of no, this legislation does not apply to that. What it does apply to is for somebody who puts a built-in generator in their home.
Like a generator?
Correct. A large packaged unit, and they backfeed the home. This requires them to put an automatic transfer switch in so that whenever it fires up, it's not backfeeding through that system, and either providing that the waves get the electrical waves, the resonance gets out of sequence and negatively impacts the generator, or if someone, as Chairman Hazelwood says, primarily a safety issue, someone thinks the line is down and it's not, it's hot, and then there's a safety issue. So it's a good bill. It's technically sound, and I thank you for bringing it. Seeing Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the sponsor for bringing this back to this session. We've had a lot of bad weather since the last time you've made this presentation. I wished we could have finished it in the 111th, and I know that comment's out of order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Only out of order, Mr. Chairman, when the chairman doesn't agree with it. Chairman Hazelwood.
And I just want to comment that we did finish our work in this house.
Okay, everybody. Any more questions on the bill? I do not see any more questions on the bill, so therefore we are voting on House Bill 252 by Chairman Hazelwood. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by nay. Hearing none, House Bill 252 is headed off to calendar and rules from here. Next up on today's agenda is House Bill 0009 by Representative Reedy. Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you've got a
Got a
lively
motion and a
committee
second on
here.
it. You're in good posture. Please present the bill to us.
Yes, on House Bill 9 is a very similar with over that we had on the House floor, but we were unsuccessful in getting it completed last session. And I would like to read, Mr. Chairman, it was actually after the fact that we passed the bill and it was headed to the House floor. And the letter was addressed to Dear Commerce Committee members. Beacon Impact, and of course, this is from Ron Schultes, Director of Policy and Research from Beacon Impact, and we still have the support of NFIB, AFP, and the Beacon Center. Beacon Impact, the sister advocacy arm of the Beacon Center of Tennessee, has decided to endorse and urges you to vote for or vote yes on House Bill 1843 by Representative Reedy to repeal the onerous licensing requirements for locksmiths. According to the Institute of Justice License to Work study, Tennessee has the nation's second most onerous locksmith license and highest licensing fee in the country. Meanwhile, 36 states allow locksmiths to work without any onerous license requirements at all, including 5 of Tennessee's bordering states, instead choosing to rely on business license and consumer protection laws to protect the public. Tennessee should continue to strive to be the most business-friendly state in the country, making it easier to enter the workforce, start a business, and find qualified workers. Reducing or repealing onerous licensing requirements is one way to help achieve that. We ask you to vote yes on House Bill 1843. Sincerely, Ron Schultes. So, Mr. Chairman, it's even if you look at the fiscal impact of this license, it says the Division of Regulatory Boards can support any decrease in revenue to the BPPS within existing resources. Further, the division will not experience a significant decrease in expenditures as a result of the reduced workload. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm open for any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. I have a question from Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to rehash everything I went over in subcommittee, but I still feel that and I partially agree with everything that Chairman Reedy has said, but I don't feel that we need to totally wipe out every regulation on locksmiths, and therefore I will be voting no on this bill.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. Was that your hand up I saw down there, Representative Powell? You're recognized.
I guess just a question for the sponsor. I mean, the only concern I've got here is with the locksmith profession. I mean, you're talking about somebody that essentially is providing access. It's a safety issue. If, I would think that part of this is we want to license and regulate that industry because on some level they have access to your home, your car, your belongings. And I understand that maybe we have onerous standards here in the state, and maybe we could look at amending some of those. But can you speak to, if we totally deregulate this industry and take away the licensure, guarantee the safety of Tennesseans?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sponsor.
And thank you for that question. And it's been an interesting roller coaster ride. I was here grandfathered in for the locksmith licensing. We were promoting the locksmith profession in being licensed by the state of Tennessee. And throughout the turmoil across the country, there's only 13 states that require the licensure, and even the American Locksmith Organization of America was pushing it. But after the amount of pushback from other states, that's why there's no further states that become licensed. And what we're finding out, and I'll share numbers with you. When I first got here, of course, I talked to the legal team at ALOA, asked who's got the best locksmith law in the country, and they said Tennessee. Well, we don't, folks. And the whole time I've been here trying to firm it up, but a lot of confusion and things going on. And what we found out when we first instituted the locksmith law, we had 5,000, and remember this number, 5,000 licensed locksmiths. Okay. Here are the numbers in 2016 and even today. Licensed locksmiths. So in other words, in my business, I have to license the locksmith. So if you work for me, I license you as well, but then we also have to license the business name or the company. So in 2016, when I got elected to office and I was here, we had 377 locksmiths. What happened to the 5,000? 2020, we went to 345. Upon the fiscal note this year, of course, the fiscal note went down in size, but in 2021, now there's 299. The apprentices, this is an important number to listen to. In 2016, there were 295. And why is it important? We can hire you as an apprentice. You will be an apprentice the rest of your life unless you decide to become fully licensed. When you become fully licensed, then the continuing education classes kick in. So as a business owner, that if I wanted to have a huge locksmith company, I don't want to pay for all those classes and stuff. I'll take you as an apprentice. I will throw you the keys to the van, a cell phone, go do the job. If you get, to a job you can't do, call me, I'll walk you through it. I got a problem with that part. So in 2020, that increased, almost doubled to 511. So I'm hiring a bunch of people at minimum wage, calling them apprentices, but they have to have no education other than what I'm teaching them at my shop. Then as far as 2021, that number went up by 4, it's 514. Now, here's the important part. What are we doing to the companies in the state of Tennessee? 2016, there was 253. 2020, 236. Today, 216. And you might be asking, well, what happened to the numbers? Now, let me back up before the licensing law came into place. We have a business license. We are insured. We're treating it like a business. I've done state and federal jobs, requires, and of course, there's a certificate of insurance. What you have to have, those folks won't let you on the premises. If I'm trying to buy locksmith supplies from out of state, and I actually have a distributor out of Houston, Texas, they wanted to see my business license, my driver's license, proof that I'm an actual business entity in the state of Tennessee. Forget about the locksmith license. When I get calls today to unlock a house, a safe, a car, guess how many people ask me for a photo ID and ask me if I'm a certified locksmith? That's right, 0. Nobody cares. Why? There's an ad for Ace Hardware, high security keys for your vehicle. You could loan your car to somebody and they could bring your car back, and guess what? They stopped at Ace and had a key made for your car. Are they required to be licensed and regulated as we are in the profession? No. What about Walmart? What about the automotive shop where you take your vehicle to? That scanner that they help do the checkup on your car, they can program keys with that. So they're tapping into our business as well. A lot of folks got out from underneath the law at that 5,000 because if locksmith work is a small percentage of your company, you do not have to be licensed because you already got your contractor license or anything else. So with that, we still treat it like a business, but what we're finding out, and the decrease in locksmith numbers, locksmiths, it's elderly locksmith friends of mine, they either retired or have passed away, and everybody looks at the cost to get into the locksmith business in Tennessee and said, I'll go wash windows or decks or cars or paint houses. I hope that answers your question.
Before I come back to you, Representative Powell, Representative Rady, we aren't allowed to use props in here.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
I know that was reinforcing your argument. A very comprehensive and detailed argument, and compelling at the same time. So Representative Powell.
Well, and I appreciate that, sponsor, and that was a very detailed explanation. But I guess for my general question is, you're in the profession, and I'm not, but so you feel like by deregulating and doing away with the licensure, we're in no way reducing the safety of Tennesseans or allowing more people to pose, show themselves to be experts that could be criminals that don't have any kind of licensure. I mean, that's my biggest concern here is just the safety component of this and making sure, and I understand somebody could take their car, but I think that there is value in when I look up locksmiths, I know and I'm not asking for the verification because I know we have licensure in the state, but I just want to make sure that you feel confident, and if you could speak to that about the safety of the general public if we do away with this licensure.
Right.
Representative Reedy.
Chairman, and to answer that question, I did make phone calls. Now, the last 5 years, I've been the president of Middle Tennessee Locksmith Association. Now, there's East Tennessee Locksmith Association, West Tennessee Locksmith Association, and then a statewide, it's called TOOLS, it's Tennessee Organization of Locksmiths. And we've been having this conversation, how do we get enforcement? We have zero enforcement of this law, folks, zero. Okay, so when I started the conversation 2 years ago, trying to visit with other locksmiths, Chairman Moon, in your area, in Maryville, I was given a name and I talked to the locksmith there and he said, well, I also have a location in Knoxville. I said, how is Knoxville location doing for you? He said, I could name you 12 people that are offering locksmith services that are unlicensed and there's nothing I can do about it. I just got to work with them. And the same thing, Clarksville, Montgomery County. I could name you 6 folks running around up there that are unlicensed. Now, some of them, I grant you that. They found out there's no enforcement. They did not renew their license, or they come up with a different name and continue to provide those services. Certainly, what happens today if you get bad service for a roofing job or automotive repair? Where do we go? I mean, we're not licensing those folks, but yet they go to local law enforcement, a district attorney, or hire a lawyer to solve that. Are we diving off the deep end saying, well, there's going to be a felon with a tool bag everywhere? They're already here, folks. It's regardless of this law or not, but I just wanted to show you the actual numbers of us who are doing everything by the law, and we don't think it's fair treatment. Somebody brought up the point saying, okay, what if we just made you register as a locksmith? I thought that was a great idea, and I actually traveled to Las Vegas. In Nevada legislator gave away their opinion, their rights to the local city council of Las Vegas. And then they said, we're going to license locksmiths in Las Vegas. And it's Sin City, everything, there's money going around everywhere. Well, with the city council, what did they write in? Well, you had to have a physical location, you had to have X number of employees. And those friends of mine that I knew in Las Vegas that had only a mobile operation had to leave town. They were out of business. So do we trust the locals even with this? And of course, I'm still visiting with my licensed locksmiths friends and saying, we don't know what the right answer is. We would like to see it stripped out of Tennessee code. And if we find that it's necessary, let's come back together and figure out the right way to do this. And the border states to Tennessee, there's no reciprocity. So if you're coming out of Atlanta, you got to be licensed by the state of Tennessee. Now, with that, Alabama has got a locksmith license, and it's a statewide organization. They know how to run an association. They are self-regulating. Now, I reached out to the folks in Texas. There's like 24 state troopers who enforce the law for the locksmiths in Texas. I said, how's it working out? And they come back and said, well, it's lousy because they catch a person illegally doing it, send them in front of a judge. The judge says, rape, murder cases, drug cases, we don't have time to worry about an unlicensed locksmith. We got better things to do. Mr. Chairman, that's...
All right. I believe that the bill sponsor has very thoroughly answered a lot of aspects to this issue. And I believe I heard in there that you believe that this is in the best interest of not only the profession, but also the consumers and citizens of the great state of Tennessee. And so now I've got 3 others on the list. Representative Lynn, you have a question.
Representative Reedy, thank you so much for this explanation. I totally see what you're saying and totally get it. I do have a question, Smith, because it didn't come with any extra keys. So I met him over there and he told me how to bring the HUD to prove that we own the building. Showed him the HUD. He looked at the key. Oh, look at this. Can't duplicate this key. And on his honor, he did not, duplicate that key. And I said, okay, just rekey the building for me. So it's not that locksmith licensing law that caused him to say, you know, I need to see that you really own the building. I cannot duplicate this key. What was it that caused him to do that? Because, you know, I really respected that. Even though it was an inconvenience for me, I certainly wouldn't want someone just to get a key to my building and rekey it on me. So can you explain that?
First off, Lynn, is with regards to this, does your vote on this bill hinge upon the answer to that question?
Well, I think for constituents, they might want to know, you know, you've gotten rid of this law. It seemed like a protection for me. And so how do I explain that to them?
Understood. Mr. Sponsor.
That's a good question because it just happened this past week in this gas station. They wanted to make sure that their employees couldn't take that key to the hardware store and get it duplicated. Now with that, I've got what we call a restricted keyway. So I've got the only restricted keyway in Middle Tennessee for this specific keyway. So it's a high security key. You're right. Some keys that are stamped duplicate, you can run to Walmart and get the key made. You've got to ask that question. Now, I've rolled up on the same thing. Maybe it's a patented keyway. I don't have it. I can't get access to it. And that's to solve the problem is just to rekey it. And I hope that explains the answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Representative Faison. Question on the bill. The question on the bill has been called. It's been saying, any objections to questions? I see none. All those in favor of voting on House Bill 009 by Representative Reedy, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. You can record your no votes with the clerk, please. That bill is headed to finance. All right, next up, House Bill 386 by Chairman Russell. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee. This legislation moves the Workers' Compensation Exemption Registry from the Division of Business Services of the Secretary of State's Office to the Bureau of Workers' Compensation within the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. At the time that the Workers' Compensation Exemption Registry became law many years ago, the Bureau of Workers' Compensation did not have the capacity to manage the registry and the filings associated with it. The Bureau now has the ability and capacity to manage the registry.
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Chairman Russell, House Bill 386 is off to calendar and rules from here.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Now we're on to House Bill 395 by Chairman Boyd.
Motion. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 395 is kind of it's interesting that Representative Russell just ran that bill dealing with the Workers' Comp Exemption Registry. What this bill does is it simply clarifies that people that were taken off of the registry between December of 2019, that were taken off in December 19, that if they had a certificate from the Secretary of State's office and it was given to a contractor, that between December 9th, 2019 and September 9th, 2021, that contractor is not required to carry workers' compensation insurance on that subcontractor, which is consistent with how the program works. I can go in a lot more detail, Mr. Chairman, if need be, but that's a pretty simple synopsis of it.
We appreciate that threat. Do I have any questions of the bill sponsor? We've got a question. All those in here seeing no objections, the question, House Bill 395, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Hearing none. You're off to calendar and rules. Chairman Zachary, you were filling your basket full down there.
We'll be ready. Thank you.
All righty. And concluding today's calendar is House Bill 58 by Chairman Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill was brought to me by the Tennessee Bankers Association. When a bank repossesses non-real property like mobile homes, boats, or cars, current law allows the bank to hold it on its books for 6 months before asking the Department of Financial Institutions for an extension. This bill would simply extend that holding period from 6 months to 12 months. With that, I'll take any questions.
Call the question.
Thank you. We've got a question on this bill. Any opposition to the question? Seeing none, we are voting on House Bill 58 by Chairman Haston. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, hearing no nays. We are sending that one to calendar and rules. Having no other business in front of this committee, does anyone have any business? As everyone seems to be done with their business, we will adjourn until next week.